This is Haley from Starlight Cafe, and today we're going to be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1. To give a non-spoiler summary for Jujutsu Kaisen is about a teenage boy named Yuji Itadori who discovers that walking among us, even though we cannot see them, are these kind of demon-like creatures called curses. And to make a long story short, he develops the ability to fight back against these curses and goes to a school with other teenagers like him who also know how to fight these curses. And that's as non-spoiler as I can get. So if that's any interest to you, go ahead and watch that. I'm going to do my usual 3-second countdown and then I'm going to get right to it. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so just gonna jump right to it. Jujutsu Kaisen for a long time was my favorite anime of all time up to this point. And I'm not saying it's the best anime, because there are better anime, better manga, better, but it was my favorite is the thing. Now, that said, do I still hold that opinion? I'm not really sure, but I cannot deny the fact that I have watched the first 13 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen, or 13 or 14, the first half before we get to the Goodwill event, whatever that is called, I can't remember, but I've probably watched that section alone, 5-6 times? I don't know. I probably said this in the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 video too, but I can't remember for the life of me. But it's been a lot. I've seen this a lot. So it was actually, on this run around, it was kind of a trudge to get through because I've already seen it so many times. I just wanted to kind of refresh my own memory so that I could better talk about this. The way I'm going to break this down is I'm going to just go through the arcs or sections of stories and talk about those first, and then I'm going to do my usual, just going through the characters and talking about them. So first we have our opening bit, and that's where you get to meet Yuji and Megumi, and you learn about what curses are, basically everything leading up to the cursed womb stuff. Firstly, this gives me an opportunity to talk about, honestly, in another universe, I'd like to believe that Yuji teams up with the occult club that he was with at the very beginning of the story, and they help him and Megumi and Nobara solve, mysteries revolving around curses. Kind of like on a Scooby-Doo type of thing. Just a little fan fiction, a little fan canon in my head, And this section of story is I think this section of story is nice as a kind of introduction to the characters. I think it serves its purpose well, and it gets you engaged, and you really get to learn the type of person that Yuji is especially. And that brings us to the cursed womb section of story, where you kind of get to see Yuji fall back a little before he jumps forward again, kind of fall on his butt before he gets back up on his feet, and you get to kind of know how Sukuna is a little bit better as a result, and you get to know how Megumi is a little bit better as a result too. And honestly, this used to be my least favorite part of the first half of the season, but honestly now I would say, or let me rephrase that, my least favorite part of the season, but now I would say that's actually not the case, because I can appreciate it a little bit more. I think, that said, the twist where Sukuna rips out Yuji's heart. First of all, the fact that Yuji was unable to switch back, I don't know if that was ever explained either, but yeah, that was definitely, at the time, that was a good twist. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was on the edge of my seat. And I imagine most of you were, except maybe the ones that are just kind of desensitized to shonen, where like you always know that the hero's going to come out on top, with some exceptions, of course. Like I would say Hunter x Hunter. But that's, besides the point. We're talking about Jujutsu Kaisen today. And then after the Cursed Womb section of story, that's when we get into my favorite part of the story, which is the stuff with Mahito and Junpei. And I actually have to say, this time around, I think because I've watched this section so many times and watched these fights and these emotional beats so many times, I think it's kind of similar to the problem I had, if you remember, on my Stranger Things 4 review. I talked about, I expected to be more emotional with the Max scene in Season 4. If you know, you know. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think the same problem happened here for me with the Mahito transfiguring Junpei thing. Because it just didn't hit the same. And I think this kind of comes back to, I've said this in the past, a story is best consumed the first 2 times, and after that it's more of a comfort thing. And because I've already consumed this so many times, I think it does kind of lose some of its flavor. But I did, I still wanted to talk about this because, Season 3 is coming. Actually, at the time of recording this, the first 2 episodes are already out. So I wanted to just get my reviews for the rest of Jujutsu Kaisen in before I start talking about Season 3 when that finishes. So I think Mahito is probably the best villain in the first season, just full stop. Because he's so intimidating, and pretty much every character who's not Yuji is incredibly unsafe anytime Mahito is on screen. And also the fake out with Junpei, I think that was devious but well done on the anime's part, and that's something that the anime has an advantage over the manga in that you can kind of tease him being a part of the team in the opening, only for the manga readers to know, oh, that's just some evil stuff right there, because they know Junpei's not going to be a part of the team. Or, given how this conformity gate stuff went, I'm going to say it's possible that people back in the day would have seen the anime and thought, oh, the anime is going to change the plot. They're going to keep Junpei alive. So, well done on, I guess, Mappa's part, or whoever is in charge of that. So then, that concludes, the first half of Season 1. And I remember they took, I want to say a month in between the first half and the second half. And we move into, I think it was called the Goodwill event. In my notes, I just called it the contest, because I genuinely can't remember what it's called. But yeah, so the Goodwill event is, I guess, you can call it. This was actually more entertaining than I remember. I remember, it was fun to watch as it was happening, week to week, because I'd finally caught up at that point. And there are things about it that I still enjoy just as much, maybe a little less so, but just as much as when I was watching it for the first couple of times. I still think Yuji and Todo's interactions together, their dynamic, is the best part of this section of the story. And honestly, throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, throughout the whole of Bruh. Throughout the whole of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1, Yuji and Todo's dynamic is my favorite dynamic. And that's what I'll say. I'll just keep it to Season 1 for now. But the other stuff is cool too, the reveal that Panda is actually a cursed corpse with 3 different, I guess, souls, spirits, personalities, whatever you want to call it. I get that they're supposed to be 3 separate entities, but really it's just, functionally speaking, it's just Panda in different transformations, it seems to me. Like, that's how it's portrayed. And watching Maki shine, and Maki and Nobara, but especially Maki was just kind of glazed throughout the contest. I mean, let's look at all the victories she took just in this section of story. You have, she won against Miwa, she won against Mai, let me think, let's see. Yeah, I think those are all the people she actually went against. But I mean, that's 2 wins as opposed to everybody else's 1, if that, you know. And I thought Hanami was a very intimidating villain in that section of story. Not as good as Mahito, in my opinion, though. And then the very last section of season 1, you have the death painting arc. I believe that's what it's called, and that's what I'm going to call it. The death paintings, the 3 brothers. And that is actually my least favorite section of the story. There's things I like about it. Like, I like the kind of shine that Megumi gets, and I like that it brings some attention to his sister. You get to learn a little bit about that. But they don't touch on it too much, really. And it's not like his sister is like a mainstay character. She's kind of just, for the sake of this arc, she's kind of just a plot device, like a pseudo rescue mission-esque. And that brings me to say that overall, from like a story perspective, how do I feel about season 1? I would say it's pretty good. It's not like I said, it's not the most phenomenal thing to ever hit the market, you know, but it's still really enjoyable to me. And I will say, just on first watch-throughs, I actually enjoyed season 1 more than season 2. However, my process of watching season 2, there were some things that kind of got in the way of my enjoyment of the season. So I'm actually hoping to change my mind on that on my rewatch for this. And it will only be my second rewatch. Not my second. It will be my first rewatch, my second watch through. So that should go better for me than this did. So now I'm just going to kind of go through and talk about the different characters, just to kind of knock some of the unimportant ones out of the way, at least in my opinion. Mei Mei didn't really get a whole lot of screen time, so I don't have a whole lot to say about her for this season. I'm actually going to check these off as I talk about them, so bear with me. But yeah, Mei Mei, Noritoshi Kamo, that's the blood manipulation guy from the contest. There's not a whole lot that I have to say about him, not a whole lot to say about Momo, that's the witch girl, or like the broomstick lady. I don't really have much to say about Utahime, that's the teacher for the Kyoto students. Jogo, that's the volcano curse guy. He's just kind of whatever, he's just kind of like cocky and like in theory strong, but you know, he's gonna kind of develop a reputation. If you haven't watched Jujutsu Kaisen, first of all, I'm surprised you're still here. But if you haven't watched Jujutsu Kaisen, or maybe you just haven't watched beyond season 1, he's kind of got a reputation for being in theory strong, but always going against like the strongest guys possible, and so therefore he just looks like weak sauce. He's strong with no feats. I don't have a whole lot to say. In theory I should, because she got a lot of shine compared to some of the other side characters this season. But like, I just kind of find her to be bratty, and maybe that's what you're supposed to take away from her, but she's just kind of bratty and whiny, and I don't even think her ability is that cool either. Geto wasn't super, like, I'm not gonna say he wasn't relevant, because it's not that, but Geto was just kind of like, he didn't get the same level of attention that he did in the movie, so there's not as much to talk about with him. He's, they're kind of just building up and, building intrigue for next season. Toge, Panda, and Maki. Toge, just like in the movie, I don't have a whole lot to say about him because he doesn't talk other than when he's using his curse speech, or he's just kind of like this gag character, but not. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Toge, but I think his power is theoretically cool. But then even that, it's kind of not super useful because he always just it's like the quickest ability to burn out. And those are all the ones where I'm like, I don't really have a whole lot to say about these guys. So now I'm gonna kind of just go through the rest of the list, starting with Yuji Itadori, my favorite protagonist, and in my opinion, a more likable protagonist than Yuta Okotsu. However, I respect anybody who prefers Yuta. It's just me personally, I prefer Yuji. The reasons I like Yuji so much is he's just this kind, compassionate guy. And I remember when I was first watching this, I loved how, and I think it was Nanami points this out in this show, but he gets angry on other people's behalf, and I think that's really cool. And sometimes I can relate. He's always trying to help people, and he always puts others before himself, and I find all of that to be very admirable. And he's pseudo underdog-ish, because he's got that superhuman strength and speed and stuff, but also he's new to this whole cursed energy thing, so he doesn't have any cool abilities really. He gets Divergent Fist, but what is Divergent Fist other than just more punchy? When you've got all these cool technical abilities Megumi's 10 Shadows, and Nobara was one of my favorite abilities in the entire series with the resonance and straw doll technique and all that stuff that she does with her hammer and nails. And Gojo with the Infinity, where you can do whole videos on how that works. And Nanami, even Nanami's ability to me is cooler than Divergent Fist, because it's you gotta hit a certain point, and then he's got the overtime thing, and he's also just kind of cool. You got all these fun, cool abilities, and it's in that sense, Yuji falls behind. But, as a character, Yuji's great. Like I said, kind, compassionate, and just always helping people. To counteract Yuji here, we have Sukuna, who I feel is basically everything that Yuji is not. He doesn't care about other people. He revels in their suffering. He goes out of his way to, make people's lives difficult, especially Yuji's, because he hates him. And where Yuji is not skilled in cursed energy or Jujutsu, Sukuna is the complete opposite, a master. At some point you'll find that he is called the greatest sorcerer in all of history, or something like that. And we don't really know his abilities yet in season 1, but even in season 1, he's this imposing presence. You don't want Yuji to let him out, and he's not quite this ticking time bomb, because the show makes it apparent that he's got it under control, other than in the Cursed Womb arc, where he kind of doesn't switch back in at first. So yeah, Sukuna's this kind of chaotic, neutral-esque type of character that really adds to the story, in my opinion. Yuji and Sukuna together make Jujutsu Kaisen, in my opinion. And then alongside Yuji, we have Yuji's Naruto squad, starting with Megumi. I don't really like Megumi that much, but I like Megumi more than Sasuke. But no, seriously, I think Megumi's ability is cool, but I'm not a big fan of those broody type of characters. You know what I mean? Too cool for school. And there's things I like about Megumi besides his ability. I like his I like that, he's pretty moral, and he stands on his morals a lot more than most of the Jujutsu sorcerers in this series are portrayed. So I'll give him that. And then we have Nobara, who of the three, well, Yuji is my favorite, but of this group, of the four of them, this little Naruto squad, Nobara is also my favorite. And honestly, she might be my second favorite character in the series. I don't know, definitely of the season, but maybe even of the series. I'd have to really think about it. I just like how crazy and, like, I don't know if dominant is the right word, or aggressive, assertive. I'm not sure. But just, Nobara just gives this, like, bad beat energy. You know what I mean? Like, she don't take nothing from nobody, and she makes her own rules. And I really like that. And also, she's got a cool ability. And she's just oozing with confidence. So, yeah, Nobara, love her. Can't wait to see more of her. And then we have Gojo, this sort of Kakashi in this group, the mentor in theory. But I don't think the same with the movie. I don't think Gojo's a very good teacher. And maybe I would like to think that it's because he's like at the pinnacle of Jujutsu, So, and I guess maybe I'll talk about this more in season 2, but because of the ability he has, it's basically like somebody who's born with raw talent. It's hard to teach talent, but that's not to say that he's not skilled. There's things he could teach. It's just I don't think he's a very good teacher. But as a powerhouse, and just the way he's so confident and cool and smooth, and those are his strong suits. He's very good at being in control of any situation that he is a part of, to the point where when he is faced with potential difficulty, like, that's when things are interesting to him. And in that sense, I think I like him, but he's not my favorite character by any means. And then we have Nanami, and I quite like Nanami. He's up there. He's probably, like, in this season, just counting the characters of this season, he's probably top 5 for me. I don't know where in there I would put him, but he's up there somewhere. And I like that he's kind of relatable in the sense that, he doesn't really want to work for a living, and he finds that to be bullshit, and I'm absolutely here for it. I get that, man. And, he tries to be a sorcerer for a living, finds that shit sucks, so he tries to get, like, a normal civvy job, and then he finds that he hates that shit too, and then he finds that he contributes nothing to society, so he, goes back to being a Jujutsu sorcerer, because somehow, even though it's a thankless job, it's less thankless than the businessy bullshit that he was doing before. And I just find that relatable, minus the Jujutsu sorcery. Maki is kind of like, I feel like there's a lot of similarities between Maki and Nobara, and I think they play into each other as well. Obviously, Maki doesn't have, like, any kind of interesting abilities. The most interesting thing about her is how amazing she is with nothing interesting behind it. Like, she doesn't have any abilities. She's just really skilled and strong and talented, I guess. Maybe not talented. She probably going for it a little bit. But, she's phenomenal in her unphenomenality. That doesn't make any sense. And then there's Panda. the bit, I should just leave it at that. But on a serious note, I do like Panda. I think he's funny. I think he's just a jolly, nice guy. And I don't really have anything negative to say about him. Like, he's just cool. I don't think there's any way to improve on his character. He's just a friendly guy, and that's all he needs to be. Toto, I love Toto. I think he's awful. Like, I think he's probably an awful... No, not probably. I think he's an awful person, but I just enjoy his dynamic with Yuji so much. I think he's so goofy and ridiculous, and I think his ability is really fun and cool. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when Sasuke got his Rinnegan, and he was kind of like him and Naruto together teaming up and he doing the switchy thing. You know, like, I think that's a cool ability, so seeing it anywhere is points for me. Principal Yaga, that's the one that makes the cursed corpses. He's pretty cool. Principal Yaga's cool, but like, there's not a whole lot to say about him either. I should have included him in the list of people where I was like, don't have much to say about. But yeah, like, Hanami, that's the forest cursed spirit thing that like talks in reverse. First of all, I think the talking in reverse thing is cool. It does mean watching in dub, which is how I consumed this season, is just kind of weird though. But if you watch it in sub, at least you can just read the subtitles backwards and you're like, oh, okay, so that's what he's saying. Or she. I don't know what the gender of Hanami is, because it sounds like a female voicing it. But anyway, yeah, I think Hanami as a concept is really cool. Like, a cursed spirit that cares about the environment type of thing. And I think it's cool that they can like hide their presence. And I think the whole, like, you take the cast off and it's like they've got this big black arm with the flower on it. Like, I thought that was really cool. And I think their abilities are really cool, especially like the kind of branch extending out thing, or whatever you want to call it, like the tree stump. I don't know. The like tree bridge thing that it does. I do think outside of Sukuna, Mahito, and I think I said this a little bit already, but Mahito's probably the most intimidating villain in the series. Mostly just because, like I said, everybody is in danger when he's on screen, with the exception of Yuji. And I remember my first time watching when Nanami got pulled into that domain expansion. I thought for sure that Nanami was cooked, and then they gave us that flashback, and I was like, oh, he's cooked for real. Except back then we didn't say cooked, that wasn't a thing. But you know what I mean. And, I don't know, I really enjoy Mahito as a villain, and I like the direction that they go with him, but for just this season, he is like, to me, he's kind of like the final boss of the season, even though by all technical standards, I guess that's the death paintings. I feel like they were more of like season 2. They're kind of like this weird season 1.5. Because really, like, season 2 ends with the contest, in my opinion. They had to fit, you only get 24 episodes a season. Next up, we have Principal Gakuganji. So Principal Gakuganji was very interesting. He's kind of this, he's kind of a representation of the elders as a concept that Gojo was, kind of against. He's that representation of the things that Gojo's against. He wants Yuji eliminated, and he kind of skirts around the rules to kind of push his agenda. And I like the kind of push and pull between him and Gojo. And also his ability is less cool than I found it before, like when I first watched this. Miwa, I still think is adorable. I wish that she could do more. I hate that she is so ineffective. Because in theory, she's cool. like, I almost wish she had her own anime where she could shine more and not be surrounded by the cast that she is surrounded by. Or just, I don't know, do better, you know? And then there's Mekamaru, who, for the purposes of this season, the most I can say about him is, like, I think his situation is really freaking sad. Like, I'd rather be Maki than be Mekamaru. I don't know, just imagine that. I mean, imagine having to sit in, like, that kind of, I don't know, bath thing that he's in, and he's, like, always in pain, and he has to just live his life kind of remotely. Like, imagine your life takes place entirely through Zoom meetings, and that's Mekamaru's life. It looks like the last character I have here is Ijichi. Ijichi, I think, is a really nice. He's just there to help. That's it. That's all. He's just a nice guy. He's just there to help. I think he got a lot more screen time than I realized he did. And I think he's kind of funny. Like, his lines, anything to do with Gojo. Like when for example, when he pulls over and or when Gojo tells him to pull over and he thinks that he's pulling his chain, and Gojo's like, drive off, and he's like, are you gonna hit me? And Gojo's like, well, what kind of person do you think I am? Like, I remember that, and I was like, that's funny. That's funnier than I remember. So yeah, I guess, so like I said, season 1 overall, where do I put it? I would say it's pretty good. Hopefully I changed my mind on this, but as far as I remember enjoying season 1 more than season 2. I will report to you probably next week about whether or not my opinions have changed. If I had to give this or this season any kind of critique, it would be really, I think this is just a problem that anime has, so I don't even know if I'm going to believe. I guess take this critique with a grain of salt, but after having sat through, Stranger Things and Wednesday and some of the Ghibli movies, everything else that I've reviewed up to this point, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed with Jujutsu Kaisen, and that might be with all anime, especially shonen anime, is just the rate at which things move is so fast that, like, moments that would be huge in any other show are kind of small in Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, shoot, there are 5 different arcs in this one season of 24 episodes, and I did the math. It's about 20 minutes, give or take, of actual, like, watch time that isn't openings or endings or recaps or any of that. So, 20 minutes of actual episode. And you do the math, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's like 8 hours of watch time for a season, which is the same as watching an entire season of Stranger Things. And I feel like a whole lot more happened in that 8 hours, but it was so much that it just felt like it was moving very slowly. And unfortunately, that just might be because, like I said, I've watched this season so many times that it might have just moved slower for me. So hopefully I have a lot more positive things to say for my favorite anime on season 2. But I will let you guys know because you'll be here. So thank you for watching. Have a great day, or thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Bye-bye.